So I am hopeful that we have a few more folks that are still going to join us this evening, but why don't we go ahead and get things started? First off, thanks very much for coming out for our November edition of the VSBA board meeting. I do want to do some member introductions for our new members, and then also for our existing members as well too, so everybody gets a chance to meet one another. But just before I do that, I want to give a huge thank you to Sue, Carrie, Sandra, and Susan for a fantastic virtual conference once again this year. You guys did an amazing job. I just want to say thank you for that. Greatly appreciate it, folks. And then after that, why don't we do some member introductions? So we have some new VSBA board members joining us after our regional meetings have completed. And three folks I see right now, two of them with us this evening. But why don't I start with, I'm just looking around my screen, and forgive me, is it Suzanne or Susan? What's the right pronunciation there?
It is Suzanne.
Suzanne, would you mind just giving us a brief introduction, and welcome to the VSBA board, by the way.
Sure. My name is Suzanne Buck. I live in Bridport, and I sit on the ACSD board as well as chair the PAHCC board, which is the Patricia A. Hannaford Career Board. And I've been on school boards for probably 10, 12 years now, starting with Bridport. And I raised both, my husband and I raised both of our kids here in Bridport, and one is married, lives in Bangor, Maine, and the other one lives in Batavia, New York. And I guess that's enough of an introduction of me.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Welcome to the VSBA board. I think the next one I see is, I'm assuming Lisa's iPhone is Lisa Miser, the new VSBA board member. Is that correct?
Yes. Hi, Lisa Miser. I live in Proctor. I'm chair of the Corey Valley Board and the GRCSU board. I am the librarian, and I have been a board member. It'll be 10 years in March.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us. I don't see Martine Golick with us at the moment. She would be the third new. Oh, and look at that. Just right on cue. She's popping in. We'll surprise her by immediately putting her on the spot. Martine, welcome to the VSBA board meeting. And I'm going to actually put you on the spot because we're doing new member introductions at the moment. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself briefly to everyone on the call. Hi. Yeah, can you hear us, Martine?
I can, yes,
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you just let us know a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Martine LaRock-Gulick. Let's see, I was a high school teacher for many, many years. I live in Burlington, and I recently retired, but I'm certainly not retired from board work. I'm on the Burlington School Board and wear many hats on the board. I have a couple kids who are grown. I do have a son at UVM now, which is fun. And I guess that's about it. Those are the big parts of my life right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Martine. And then just quickly, I'll go around. We'll do a quick introduction for all of the existing VSBA board members, the group here that knows each other intimately from this past year or so of work. And I'm just going to go around my screen. And Nancy, you're the first one up on my end.
Hi, I'm Nancy Russell, and I'm also from Texas. So, and I serve on the Hartford School Board, and this will be my third term. And in March, it'll hopefully start my fourth term. And and that's good enough. That's good. That's it.
Thanks, Nancy. Mark Schauber.
Hello. Mark Shauber. I serve on the River Valley's Unified School District Board representing Dover, as well as the Wyndham Central Board. And I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition for Vermont Student Equity.
Thanks. Colleen McKinnon.
Hi, I'm Colleen McKinnon, and I serve the Eastern Chittenden region for the Vsba board, and I sit on the Champlain Valley School District Board. Welcome to the new members. It's a fun board.
Tara Sweet and Puppy.
Puppy went away, but Tara Sweet, I am on the chair of the Fletcher Elementary School Board and also a member of the Franklin West Supervisory Union Board. I'm most likely to be chair again in the spring. We rotate through the 3-member schools, take turns each year. So Fletcher's up in March. And I've been doing this now, I think 6 or 7 years.
Awesome. Jeremy Metcalf.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Metcalf. I'm in the Milton School Board in Western Chittenden County. So.
Thank you, Jeremy. Gaston Bathalon.
Hi, I'm Gaston Bathalon. I'm on the Troy School Board as well as on the North Country Supervisory Union Board, as well as subcommittees there. We were one of the few that had our alternate governance structure approved. Over.
Thank you. That's Gaston's military background coming into play there as he says over when he's done talking. Don Collins. Ooh, Don, you're still muted though.
For the new members, they'd like to keep me unmuted, and I'm not smart enough to figure it out sometimes. But I'm on the Missisquoi Valley School Board. This is my 17th year representing school boards in this part of the state. Previous to that, I was 17 years as a superintendent, and I enjoyed board meetings so much. I then moved 15 miles away and went on a school board. And in between, I served 8 years in the Vermont Senate on the Education Committee. And welcome. This is a great experience. And we really do accomplish a lot, mainly through resolutions.
Thank you, Don. Flor Diaz-Smith.
Hey, Neil. Hello, everybody. I'm from the Washington Central area. I'm the Central Vermont representative, and I'm joining you from Guatemala today. So this is my favorite board, and I've learned a lot from them. So welcome to the new members. It's good to have new people with us.
Thanks, Flor. Dave Sharp. Oh, you're talking into mute though, Dave. There you go.
Yes, I was trying to find the mute button. I was in speaker view, didn't quite know how to get to the mute button. Anyway, welcome to the new board members. I've been a teacher at Tech Center, Auto Technology and Building Trades for 20 years in the legislature on the Education Committee, and now serving on the local Mount Abraham School Board. Welcome to new members.
Thank you, Dave. Adrian Raymond.
Hello, I'm the board chair at the Mill River Unified Union School District down a little south of Rutland. I've been on the executive committee of this board, and that's been an interesting experience. I'm also serving as one of the commissioners for the educators' health insurance negotiations. So we've just finished up with that, waiting for the arbitrator's decision. So stay tuned. Let's see, I've been on school boards for a little over 20 years. I'm our town zoning administrator. I raised 3 sons and I have 1 grandson. That's it.
Awesome. Kim Gleason.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the new board members. I'm Kim Gleason. I have been from Essex, and I've served on Essex and Essex Westford school boards for the last 14 and a half years. Actually, we're currently at our place in Grand Isle because our home in Essex sold, and we've been trying to downsize there, but the housing market has not been favorable for such. So I just recently stepped down from the Essex Westford School District Board, but I had previously chaired. And this board with the VSBA, I don't even know how long I've been on this board, but it's been a long time. I'm sure Carrie or somebody knows. And it's been such, as I think Flora mentioned, a great opportunity for community to learn from each other around what's happening in our schools and school boards across the state. So I hope all of you newly joining are going to find this to be an incredible learning experience. So thanks.
Thank you, Kim. Amy McMullen.
Hi, I'm Amy McMullen, and I am the other Windsor Regional Representative. I am the chair of the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union Board and vice chair of the Mount Escutney School District Board. And I've been on the school board 12 or 13 or so years. It's been very, I have learned so much being part of the Vermont School Board Association Board. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Amy. Mark Clough via Mark's iPhone.
Welcome. Mark Clough, 10 years as Peacham School Board Chair and on the CCSU Supervisory Union Board as Vice Chair. VSBA is a great resource for us board members out there. They do a swell job, and for us to support them through the board work is fabulous. So welcome aboard. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. So Dan and Kevin, we're doing introductions for the new regional members that just joined us today. And Dan, I am now up to you.
Okay, thanks. I am recently elected, but I've been a regional representative several times in the past, and am happy to report that I believe that some other SUs in my region will already have or will soon be rejoining VSBA after having opted out for a few years. So not sure where that stands exactly, but I think that I'll just say exactly what Mark just said, that there are a lot of valuable resources here, and if we work together, it's better than us working separately. So thanks all.
Thanks, Dan. And Kevin, Amiet. Oh, you're still muted though, Kevin.
Still muted?
No, that's perfect.
Okay. Kevin Amiot, Chair of J. Westfield School Board, on the Executive Committee for North Country Supervisory Union. Been on the VSBA for a couple of years now. Again, great resources, and they do great work. Thank you.
Thanks. And I'm Neil Odell. Home district is Norwich, Vermont. I'm part of the Interstate School District with Hanover, New Hampshire, from the Dresden School District. Staff, you want to do a quick introduction as well too? Sue?
Sure. I'm Sue Siglowski, Executive Director of the VSBA. And prior to joining the VSBA, I was a school board member for, I think it was like 13 or 14 years. I've been the Executive Director for about 2 years now. And I'll pass it over to Susan.
Hi, I'm Susan Holson, Director of Education Services at VSBA for another 7 weeks. I've been here for over 4 years. And prior to that, a long time ago, I did serve on my local school boards for about 6 years. And I think this is an amazing organization, and I think that you all are amazing and make a wonderful board. And to the new members, thank you for joining. I probably have the distinct advantage of actually being the only one who knows all of you. So welcome.
Why don't I go to Carrie?
Hi, I'm Carrie Lamb. I'm the Director of Operations at the VSBA. I've been here for about 21 years. And while I've been here, I was also on the Barry Town School Board for, I think, about 6 years. So I've been on that level as well. And welcome, everyone.
And finally, Sandra.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra Cameron. I'm the Director of Public Policy. I've been with VSBA for 2 years. Prior to that, I worked in public schools in early childhood special ed and as a school administrator. So welcome.
Thanks. So now that we know everybody really well, we're going to do something that we do every year at this time. We do a little bit of board member training as to what it means to be part of the VSBA organization, especially for those folks that are new, but this is also a great refresher for the board members that have been with us for a while. And we have a special guest with us tonight to help us with that training, but I'm going to turn it over to Sue for some introductions.
Okay, thank you, Neil. So as Neil mentioned, each year in November, VSBA welcomes new board members and provides the whole board with training on the roles and responsibilities of the VSBA board. And for the past few years, I've done that training during this meeting. And this year we wanted to kind of mix it up a little bit and give the board a chance to hear from someone else and a chance to interact with someone new on this topic. I would like to introduce Phil Gore of the Texas Association of School Boards and thank him for co-presenting on this very important topic with me tonight. Phil is the Division Director for Board Development Services with Nsba, and he has significant expertise in the area of improving school district governance, including writing a book about it, as well as knowledge about state association governance. He also has experience working for the National School Boards Association and the Washington State School Directors Association. I'm going to cover the first few slides and then a few slides at the end, and Phil is going to cover the rest of the presentation. Carrie's going to run the slides, but before you share your screen, Carrie, I'll give Phil a chance to sort of introduce himself to everyone. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Sue. It's certainly an honor to join you tonight virtually. It's unfortunate that we can't be in person, but yet we're also very fortunate that we have this technology today that we didn't have 20 years ago. And I was listening carefully as people introduced themselves. Obviously, I'm curious to know more about where Nancy was from in Texas and what her experiences were here. And I'm also, I was listening, so who's going to mention something about grandchildren? I think Adrian might have been the only one mentioned a grandson. And I was like, kids, who cares about kids? Well, it's about grandkids. I was blessed to have 3 in the last year, twins in Minnesota and a granddaughter here in Texas. So I'd love to just keep talking with you and share pictures, but I would probably be cut off at some point. It was curious, 2 or 3 people being muted on Zoom. I often tell friends and colleagues, why did you tell me? Why not let me just keep talking? But aside from that, it is a pleasure to be with you this evening. And I'm going to be focusing in on that concept of a trustee. And we'll think about together what it means differently, perhaps from a local school board and other kinds of nonprofit or corporate boards versus being on an association board, and maybe even how that the roles, it was Dawn, I think, was the only one that specifically mentioned having served as a school superintendent and then in the state Senate. But I am kind of curious, what backgrounds we bring to this work, both for veteran and for new association board members, how those form a conception that may or may not serve us well. So we'll talk about that a little bit in a few minutes.
Thanks, Phil. Carrie, would you be able to share the PowerPoint? Thank you. So we'll go on to slide 2, please. So I'm going to start out just with the basic information. You probably already know that VSBA is a nonprofit organization. We're a 501c3. We've been around since 1961, and the purposes for the formation of VSBA are listed on this slide. We're governed by a board of directors. That's all of you. And we have bylaws. The bylaws are amended almost every year. We just had our annual meeting last week and went through some bylaw amendments. So I know everybody is quite familiar with that. Carrie, you could go to the next slide, please. General standards for nonprofits are set out in Vermont law, and it really tracks what is required in other states as well and nationally. So the Vermont law requires that directors of nonprofits discharge their duties in good faith and with care and in a manner that they believe to be in the best interest of the corporation. In this instance, it would be in the manner that's in the best interest of the Vermont School Boards Association. Next slide, please, Carrie. In 2016, the VSBA board adopted a code of ethics that has clear expectations for board members. And the code of ethics tracks the Vermont statute that I just spoke about and the case law, which governs the 3 duties of the board of directors for nonprofit boards. In your board packet tonight is the code of ethics. It's part of the board policies, which is a much larger document. But tonight I just included in your packet that one page, so you wouldn't have to go through all of the other policies to find it. So for you new board members, we'll be sending you a handbook that has the board policies, it has the resolutions, and it has the bylaws in it. So you'll be receiving that. There's a little bit more work the board needs to do on some of its policies. So we're not going to be printing out that handbook until that policy work is complete, which should be after the December board meeting. But prior to that, Carrie would be able to send you the current policies so that you'll have them. Next slide, please, Carrie. Okay, so this was where you take over, right, Phil?
Yeah, and Sue, give me a gift here of how long would you like me to spend? How much time should I take so that I don't run over or?
We're hoping to be done with this presentation by 6. And if it's before that, that's fine.
Okay, we can do that. I mentioned this idea of a trustee, and I used to, when I was a school board member, I would speak at civic groups, organizations about our districts, what it was like to be in school board service. I've done a lot more of that since I've worked in school board development, but it was always important to emphasize that idea of stewardship. And personally, I believe that stewardship of anything begins with a foundation of gratitude, gratefulness, that what it is that we're stewarding, we actually treasure and we value. And we like to say in school board development that, you know, board members are stewards of the community's 2 most precious resources, right? Their children and their money. Well, by common law and very kind of universally accepted across the country, these standards, if you will, for association board member service, and frankly for corporate board service as well. These are your precious resources that they're saying we need to be sure that we are maximizing the assets that we have on hand, that we're taking advantage in a productive way of, in particular, facilities, people, and goodwill. Put a comma there, a pause on goodwill, because one of the important things that we look at, and particularly on the National Council of Nonprofits, they emphasize this responsibility the board has for the culture of an organization. For whether an organization is inclusive, whether it's traditional, whether it's progressive, whether it functions well. But I just kind of urge you to think about what can the board do, and then individual members in particular, what can they do to nurture a culture that advances a spirit of inclusivity and at the same time is accomplishing the mission. Your mission statement refers to this idea of supporting all school boards to serve as effective trustees on behalf of their community, and sort of the reason, if you will, the why of the association, which I think is extremely important today, to be a collective voice for enhancing or furthering the cause of public education in Vermont. This duty of care includes the idea of oversight to ensure that activities of the association, they're actually advancing the mission again and the effectiveness and the sustainability of the organization. I want you to think for a minute about what other life experiences, board experiences you bring to bear in your understanding of your role as an association board member. When I worked in Washington for the School Boards Association there, I would frequently find myself involved in different types of activities that were trying to develop and support our association board. And it seemed most common that new association board members would say, well, it's kind of like a school district, and the executive director is like a superintendent, and we're like the school board, and our constituents, the boards, are kind of like our community. And as with any metaphor, it holds together for a while, but it doesn't hold together completely. I would often think about and talk about how that the association is not like a school district. There are no children coming to class tomorrow or tuning in virtually. There are no buses running, no meals being served, at least not very often, right? There's no pencils and paper per se. There's not state prescription of standards that students are being taught to attain. And so I think being mindful of that conception we have in our mind, well, it's kind of like a school district, but not really, right? There's a different mission, there's a different purpose. So what does it mean to exercise a duty of care for this different kind of mission? And I ask that rhetorically, knowing there's not a lot of time here for discussion, but if we could go to the next slide, this starts to get to this idea of the interest that you serve, right? The important interest, and I think we find this in a lot of association board development literature, that probably the most important policy an association can have is that conflict of interest policy. So all of you that are, and I'm glad I didn't say all y'all, I worked hard to be able to say that living in Texas, and sometimes make the mistake of saying y'all, but that is the plural of y'all down here, is all y'all. All of us, myself and you as board members, come from an experience as a school board member. So you've served on a school board, and you can understand, maybe make sense of loyalty to the school district, loyalty to the school district's mission, taxpayer funds, very importantly. And all of us had to go through a process of learning to make sense of our loyalty to the community and the difference between a delegate versus a trustee. We'll come back to that in a minute. In the literature on school boards, you can look at, there are board members who come as a delegate. They're kind of often single issue oriented, or they claim to represent a specific group of the community. And just like a delegate to a political convention, they feel obligated to go and vote in a certain manner of the people that elected them. I think it's very important in your mission statement that you've not used the word delegate or even representative, and you've used this word of trustee. Again, we understand that school board members are stewards of the people's trust. That's their fiduciary responsibility, is the oversight of the education of their children and proper use of the taxpayers' dollars. But as on an association board, think about what you've been entrusted to be a steward of. What is this best interest of the association as a whole? And just like many times on a local board, a school board, and even other kinds of boards, if there's a conflict of interest, oftentimes it has something to do with money. worst case scenario, and I've seen this happen in the state of Texas and would like to hope it's never happened in Vermont, but the school board votes and decides to take a bond to build new facilities for the school district. And they may vote 6-1 or 5-2 or 7-0, whatever the composition and outcome of the vote. On occasion, thankfully not often, you'll see a school board member actively campaigning or advocating against the bond in the district. And they'll come out on an attack, and they pride themselves in being an outlier. And that may seem like sort of an extreme example. Maybe some of you, nobody's looking like they're confessing, but maybe some of you have seen that or known of that kind of thing happening. I think often as an association board member, you may have your local school board that has an interest or a direction in which they would hope that you would vote. And there may, in fact, be an interest of your local district that is not necessarily in the interest of all districts in the state. Unfortunately, sometimes the most common kind of interest would be something around financial, right? And so certainly not my case here today from Austin, Texas, to suggest you should do this or you should do that. I would suggest you consider, when are the times that you may need to recuse yourself from a vote? When are the times that an individual may need to say, I can no longer serve in the best interest of the association because it's in conflict with the current best interest of my school district? I think that's an ethical question that needs to be inwardly addressed. And certainly it's not just about finances, right? It can be about structure. It can be about other changes to the law or things that the association as a whole that's trying to represent all the districts and communities across Vermont, they may need to take a position that's different than unique individual representations. And so there's that individual conflict of interest, but then as I was mentioning the difference between a delegate and a trustee has that responsibility to vote on behalf of the good of all, which may be different than the good of one district or even sometimes the good of one region. So I think this duty of loyalty, again, it stood the test of time. It comes from common law, and it is commonly included, expected in policies of associations and nonprofits. This idea that the board members are making a commitment to avoid taking actions or making representations that could compromise the authority of the full board in order to make decisions on behalf of the association. There are some communication pieces in there, right? On a local school board, that might be compared to an individual going out and talking to the media or other constituent groups that is taking a position different than the full board and their designated representative. Obviously, not only is it dangerous on the local level, it can be very dangerous on the association level. And I had another thought. I was listening as you were talking again, kind of curious for roles of where people came from. I don't know if any of you have served as a CEO or an executive director. You mentioned librarian and teacher, and Dawn as a former superintendent. Most of us had an evolution when we joined a local school board where we realized one day, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. And it seems like most teachers in particular, but often people who come through PTA and volunteer ranks, they usually have that awareness after about 6 months. Oh, this isn't what I thought it was. I didn't realize we were talking about things 20 years into the future, or when we have to sign for an easement that we're giving away property into perpetuity. That night for me was when gravity really hit, because I thought I was joining a local school board to make a difference for my kids, my friends' kids, and then had to realize, wait a minute, we're actually spending most of our time in long-range strategic planning that the results we won't see for 3 or 5 or 20 years. That concept of fiduciary responsibility, it comes to that. And it's not about short-sighted decisions. And so the ability of the individual members of the board and the board as a whole to think strategically and think long-term, there are a lot of ways in an organization to have a quick win that has, unfortunately, a big debt or big cost in the future. We have to be mindful of that. I play string bass, the big upright bass, and I play bass guitar as well. I learned to play string bass in the school orchestra program, and I learned to play bass guitar by sitting by a phenomenal lead guitarist. And Delmer Hutchinson is his name. He was a studio musician, and my family had started attending a new church, and Delmer would let me come at 12 years old and plug my bass into his amplifier and pretend I was playing. Delmer would always say, "You're just a little too loud." But Delmer, I can't hear it. You need to turn it down a little bit. So, I got it. I didn't know how to play, but I was kind of pretending to play. And somewhere along the way, I played in church with Delmer on Sunday mornings for a year or two. And then I didn't see him for about 6 months. And Delmer heard me play the bass guitar when I was 14 and a half. And he says, "Phil, I'm really impressed. You have developed so much. You sound amazing." He says, "But the only problem is you sound a little too much like a lead guitarist." And I've thought about that so many times since. I've written on this topic in an article in the American School Board Journal several years ago. One of these things that we have to parse out separately, and even as we give, advice, discussion, sharing with other people, clarity about our roles. And thinking on this line, I know this previous duty of care is where we're talking about how you're taking care of your people. So there's a staff versus board relationship there that we need to be mindful of. And obviously, probably the biggest complaint we find in governance work is that word of micromanagement. I've done sessions for superintendents on how they accidentally encourage micromanagement. That's a deep topic. But I think we have to be mindful of roles. What are we comparing when you think about your association service? Is it like a school district board? Well, yeah, kind of, maybe not. And what role or what previous experience are we bringing to this so that folks are able to work in complementary ways? And let's look at this duty of obedience. I'm glad that you have all of these in your policy. I think they're really important. Carry on the next slide. This is where board members will ensure that the association is following the laws, the bylaws, and stated positions. This says to me that the board is ensuring the association is acting with integrity. And I don't think that's a light word. If you look it up, obviously the root meaning comes from the word integer, which means a singleness or a oneness. And this is really important when you think about stewardship. How can the board ensure the association is adhering and following to stated positions as well as the bylaws and laws? Clarity, singleness, focus, a lot of concepts are in that. The board and individuals conduct themselves in adherence with the association's policies and purposes. So you're a board member. If you don't like the purpose, hopefully you would not stay on the board. If you don't like the policies, hopefully you would either follow them or follow the procedure to change the policies, right? Whose responsibility is that if the policies are off in one way or another? But this is very important, that individuals don't engage in activities that harm the association's ability to pursue its mission. That's like that school board member standing out there at the side of the road with a picket sign saying "Vote no" on the bond, or something of that nature, writing articles letters to the editor on why the bond is a bad idea. There has to be a singleness, a unity of purpose. And I think, very important to an organization fulfilling its mission is the idea that folks are all moving forward in the same direction. Let's go to the next slide, Carrie. An association, it's simply by definition a group of people who voluntarily come together to solve common problems, meet common needs, and accomplish goals. In the founding of school boards associations, typically there's just a handful of things that people got together and founded a school board association for. That unity of voice, being able to be an advocate at the state level to represent the school children and the position and needs of school boards. Probably the second would be to coordinate policy for school districts. And the third is often stated as developing board members, teaching and training, educating board members along the way. So now you are a steward, a fiduciary of the state association, not just the board, but the whole state association. Be thinking about what are the actions that you will do, and perhaps make a commitment to yourself and your colleagues that you won't do to interfere with the ability for the organization to meet those common needs that you've agreed to and accomplish the goals. This is very important. And I just want to emphasize that accomplish the goals. The board needs to own that vision and mission, and obviously in work collaboration with the executive director, establish what the goals are. These are the goals for the organization, right? It's not about one individual or one person's responsibility. The board needs to ensure that the organization is making progress on those stated goals. Let's go to the next slide, Carrie. So a representative governance model. I've touched on this a little bit in some different language. Whose interests do you represent? Now you're a member of the VSBA board. Do you represent the region that you serve from, or at large? Probably a couple more clicks, Carrie, as we go along here. The region or component or members that sent you. So, or do you represent the association as an organization? And maybe sometimes the answer is both. Very importantly, in the conception of a delegate or a trustee on a local school board, there are times when the school board needs to function more like a delegate board and board members. There are times when you need to agree as a unit, we're going to go out, we're going to listen to people, we're going to hear their concerns, we're going to bring them back. But on the next slide, it really gets into this difference of being a representative for versus a representative of. And it's a critical nuance for us to think about when we think about governance. So let's back up just a second, and I'll be mindful of time. 4:44, maybe 3 or 4 more minutes here for me, Sue. What is good governance? What does it look like? What does it involve? I mentioned that word integrity. Oftentimes, people have talked a lot about authenticity or transparency. We know that, I don't know what you can see on my whiteboard, but one of the things I've been working on is different ways to conceive of accountability and how different authors have been looking at that and describing that and how we can hold an organization accountable. But it all starts with a basis of holding ourselves accountable. Some of the things that the Council for Nonprofits include when they talk about good governance, they talk about an inclusive team. So we're making sure all voices are heard. And the board president is monitoring that, but sometimes may get involved in an issue or have a reason why someone else on the board needs to also make sure that this is participatory. That it's not about one person and his or her agenda. Very importantly, especially in these hyper-polarized political times that we live in, it's critical that we have a place of civil discourse and we can disclose when we have concerns or we're hearing from a group of our people in our region or our own fellow board members. That we're sharing those thoughts, but ultimately the board has to be an inclusive representative of. And this next slide fleshes that out a little bit more. If board members believe they're a representative for, they see themselves as elected representatives of a particular constituency. That's that concept of a delegate. But that will cause them to only see and voice and support, I borrow the word partisan, a singular kind of agenda, if you will, and then vote on behalf only of those constituencies' interest. That won't serve the association well. In fact, the next slide gets to this idea of how do you, board members who view their role as ensuring that the views, beliefs, values, and self-interest of the constituencies they know, those are on the table as part of the conversation, representative of. They voice the interest and opinions of those they know best, but then at the same time, vote on behalf of the overall interest of the organization and the association. I think all of this is very important and it's nuanced, and I don't pretend to know particular issues, concerns, questions that you all may have. We probably could take a couple minutes, particularly if new trustees either had a question or someone else had anything that they wanted to interject or add here.
Folks, if you want to raise your hand in Zoom, that way I can see if anybody has a question or wants to chime in at this point.
And Neil, I didn't see any little red muted mics going away. Was looking for both. So I was sufficiently boring to shut down any further conversation.
I'm not sure that's how I would read that. I'm going to go to Dave Sharp though, because we got a hand.
Yes, thank you, Dave.
So this reminds me of my first week in the legislature, and we were undergoing freshman training, and the story was about the right of women to vote in the state of Vermont. So the legislature was elected by men from local communities, and the bill before up for action was, should the state allow women to vote? So, if you're voting just for the people you represent, the men,
yeah,
then you're going to vote against this notion, because the men lose power and the women gain power, and the men's interest back home was to keep the status quo. However, if you're looking at the welfare of the state overall, you might vote to allow women to vote. And the representative from my town voted to allow women to vote, and subsequently was not reelected to the legislature. So it is a kind of a fine line that you refer to, and a choice that everybody has to make as they serve on these committees or boards.
It's a great example, Dave. Thank you. Anyone else, another example or comment before you move on and I leave your meeting? I do want to say, thank you for your service, obviously, not only on your local board, but on your association board. I first aspired to be a school board member when I was 8 years old, while most kids were dreaming of being a firefighter or police officer or maybe president. I heard about school boards when I was 8, and I didn't know what it was, but I wanted to be on one. And first ran for a school board in 1992, was not successful in that election, but I do know that, it is such a critical role in our society. And then stepping it up, I've had the privilege firsthand for more than 14 years now of working with different associations, including the national, and really have come to value, that what makes all this work is volunteers like yourself that'll step up and say, I'll serve, I'll figure it out, take the heat when needed, and be a fiduciary for our constituents. So Thank you for that. Thank you for letting me be with you tonight.
Don, you got your hand up, so I want you to.
I'd like, I want to thank you for a very nice presentation, but I'd like to tell you that probably the reason you didn't get a lot of questions, number one, you did a great job, but number two, we've been through in the last 5 years a lot of controversy about regionalization.
Yeah.
And many people were caught in this conflict of, do I support what may well be best for the students in the state of Vermont? Or do we vote for what we think is best for our little school up on the hill? So we've kind of lived this, many of us have, for the last, well, I think it's ended 2 years ago, but it was about 4 or 5 years. This was a hot topic, really hot. Even on the VSBA board, that we certainly did not all come together in agreement. So as you talked, I'm thinking, I'm glad he's here. Wish he'd been here 5 years ago, but I think that's reason maybe more silence tonight.
Yeah, those are tough issues. Don, would you say there's some PTSD among folks still, school board members across the state from that, or?
You know what? I have to tell you, I would say my regional school district was probably one of the 3 or 4 strongest opposed, at least some of the towns. They've spent a lot of money sending people to preach to other people. And once we got over that hurdle and formed a board, we've had 2 amazing years, maybe 3 amazing years of working together. And the people who thought they were going to be big losers and wouldn't gain, would probably lose, they're winning. They're small schools and they're getting opportunities for their students they never would have had, I don't believe, without digitalization.
Well, I know Sue has some more slides to cover here, so I'll try to be done.
Thank you so much, Phil. Carrie, would you be able to show? Oh, you already are. I don't even have to say it. Carrie knows where we're going. So we're going to get toward the end of the presentation. Carrie, I think it's the last 2 slides. Just a little bit more information for you that's more specific to your role as a board member. We wanted to let each of you know, especially I know that the current board members know this, but I don't think the new board members know that we provide, we're getting back to the slide, but I know what's on there anyway, so I can start telling you. We provide the email addresses of association members to you so that you can communicate with them as their regional representative. And we ask that when you do that, you copy myself and Neil on all of those regional communications. And also wanted to let you know that there in the bigger board policies, there is a policy that says that the email addresses maintained by the VSBA are for VSBA use only. So when we share those with you, the expectation is that those are used to facilitate regional communications and they are not used for any other purpose. We'd like you to introduce yourself to your fellow regional board member. There are 2 of you for each region. So if you're new, if you can pair up at some point with your other regional rep and send an introduction email to your region to let them know that you are their regional representative. And if you can make a plan between the 2 of you for ongoing communications with your region and outreach to them, that would be wonderful. We've seen different ways that this is done by different VSBA regional reps. We had one regional rep who liked to actually take notes during the VSBA board meetings and sort of summarize them and send them out to his region, letting them know what's going on. There's other ways, other things that you might want to communicate with them as well. One thing that is coming up that we always get excited about is January is School Board Appreciation Month. And with that comes a declaration from the legislature declaring it School Board Appreciation Month. And that's always exciting when it's read in the House chamber. And we do like to communicate with our members during January and let them know how much we appreciate them. In the past, we've been able to have work with Darn Tough, which is a Vermont company that makes socks, as you all know, and they've sent a pair of Darn Tough socks to each school board member in Vermont, which was really awesome because we know that our school board members are darn tough. And I know that we're not able to have Darn Tough do that this year, but we're working on something else. So we hope to have some other show of appreciation for all of our school board members in January. And last slide. Just wanted to go over the sort of the structure. The staff report to me as the executive director, and I report to the board. So if you as a board member have a request for staff to perform some type of work that's outside of a task that's been already assigned by the board or myself, that should be raised at a board meeting for full discussion by the board. And you would want to get in touch with Neil as the board president to have that added to the agenda, or you could also get in touch with me about that. I should be copied on all email communications between board members and staff. That makes sure that everybody knows what's happening where. And any concerns or questions that you have about the VSBA, please bring them directly to me so that we can resolve them quickly. So that is the end of our presentation. And we're pretty much right on time. Does anyone have any questions for me or for Phil before he leaves? Not seeing any hands at the moment. Phil, we want to thank you so much for joining us. Oh, sorry. Is there a hand?
I was just going to say Nancy Russell just mentioned in the chat box that she had to leave for a school board meeting.
Oh,
and she said, thanks for joining us, Phil.
Thank you.
And she was in Odessa, Texas.
Yeah.
Thank you, and keep your fingers crossed. This board meeting I'm fixing to go into is going to be a little warm before we get through. So keep your fingers crossed for us, okay? Otherwise, I'd stay with this board meeting, but I've really got to go to the other one. So thank you. Thank you. Bye, y'all. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Nancy.
All right. Thanks, Sue.
Thank you, Phil. We really appreciate you joining us.
We do. I will, Phil, before you go, there must be something going on, I think either with the moon and the stars or what, but this is the second meeting that I've been in less than a week where there's been another bass player on the call.
Wow.
And that has not happened to me in years. I think last week we were at the annual conference meeting. There were two other bass players with me on that meeting. And so go bass players.
Yeah. Yeah. All about that bass, right, Neil?
It absolutely is.
Yeah. Because it needs to be everyone.
Thanks a lot. All right, gang. We are going to move on then to the next item in our agenda, which is the executive committee election. And especially for our new members, it seems every year when we do this, to me, it seems a little bit awkward that you're going to be forced to make a vote on people that you just met about a half an hour ago to serve on the executive committee. But unfortunately, that's just how the timing works out on this. Our executive committee consists of two called at-large members, a treasurer and a vice president. The president position is elected annually, but it happened back in August, I think. So the timing on the president's a little bit different, and then we do the rest of the executive committee meeting at this meeting. So with that, I am going to start. We're going to go sort of in top-down order, and I will open it up for nominations for vice president, vice chair. Any nominations?
Neil,
Yes, Don?
I would nominate, I'm going to find her photo here. There she is, Flora Diaz-Smith. I did that last year and it was successful, so I'll try it again.
Okay, good job, Don. Nominations don't require a second, so I'll actually look to see if there are any other nominations for vice president. All right, seeing none then, all in favor of Gore Diaz Smith as vice president, please raise your hand, your Zoom hand, or give me a wave just so I can see everybody's photos there. All right, I am going to call that unanimous. Lisa and Kevin, I'm not, let me get the different participant list up. I'm not seeing raised hands from you guys. So if you do want to be able to chime in on this, have to use the Zoom hand feature there. Okay. Or you have got the votes for vice president, so congratulations on that.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep. I am then going to open up nominations then for treasurer. So are there any nominations for treasurer? Kim, I see your hand up.
Yes, I would like to nominate Jim Salzgiver, who's not here to defend himself. No, I'm kidding. we had talked to him about this, and he had been a great help for me as treasurer. And in that I had stepped down from our local board, I can continue to serve on the VSBA board, but not as an officer. So I told him I'd be the first to raise my hand as the finance committee participant. But that he had been a great partner in working through some of the challenges of the last few years as treasurer. And I nominate Jim Salzgiver.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for treasurer? All right. Seeing none then, all those in favor of Jim Salzgiver as the treasurer, please raise your hand. Perfect. Jim, I wish you were here to see all the love. Hopefully you're going to be able to watch this on the recording, but it was unanimous, Jim. Okay. So I am going to move on then. We have, as I had mentioned, 2 at-large member positions. And so if anyone would like to make a motion for, we'll do one at a time. So a motion for nomination for, an at-large member. And I am seeing Don Collins's hand go up again.
I'd like to nominate Mark Schwaber.
Okay.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have a vacancy now because Jim, who had been one, has moved to treasurer, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at it that way, yes, there is. I mean, there are essentially 2 vacancies. Jim has moved to treasurer. He was previously one of the at-large member positions, and Adrian was the other at-large member position. So we will be filling 2 there. So we've got a nomination for Mark Schwaber. Are there any other nominations? Or have you got your hand up from before, or is that for now?
Oh, sorry, I was not mute. Sorry, Neil. I'm going to wait. I want to nominate Colleen, but I'll wait.
Okay.
Oops.
All right. Any other?
Sure. I just have a question.
Yes.
And it's probably a Sue question and sort of point of order. We've got 2 positions open that are the same position. Obviously, all positions are open because we're re-electing for the full slate, except for you, Neil. But Sue, is there a better way to handle this to know how many people are interested in being nominated before we figure out if people are running against each other? I hate this every time, and I never remember what the answer is.
Well, I don't think you can necessarily vote on 2 people at the same time. You can certainly find out, Neil, if there are any other nominations.
Mm-hmm. But just we're talking about just one of the 2 at-large member positions, correct?
Right now you are, yes.
Right.
There are 2
Yeah.
at-large member positions on the executive committee. You are now in the process of voting on or determining the first one.
Correct. Okay. So then I have the nomination for Mark and Kim. I see your hand up again. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm following this through, like there could be 3 people interested. There could be only 2 people interested. There could be, 5 people interested. And it seems that we aren't considering the entirety of those positions without understanding who all's interested. They're the 2 same positions. What can we do to make this a more informed situation?
Yeah.
Well, Neil, if it would, even though I don't think it's the way to do it, if it would please Kim, I'd nominate Adrian and Mark. And there are 2, and then if other people want to add to it, then we could have 3, 4, 5. I was only focused on the fact that we just moved Jim from treasurer to treasurer from one of our regional people, our executive committee, and I thought it was a vacancy, so it'd be appropriate to nominate Mark. But and I think that's the way we should do it. But if it would make people happier, I'll include Adrian because I think she's done a very good job.
So let me go to the other hands first. Dan, you've had your hand up, so go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, Kim, that in the future, if people are interested in this job, they let somebody know. They could let Sue know, or they could ask another member of this board to nominate them. That's usually the way it works in small town politics. My guess is that if anybody were actively seeking this, they would have done that. But in the future, we could just make sure that the word went out. If you're interested in one of these positions, let somebody know, so that we don't come to this position like you're talking about, Kim, where there may be people who actively seek it.
Thanks, Dan. Adrian?
Sorry, I just wanted to say, could we do something similar to how we vote in town governments? Like when you're filling JP positions, there's, you might have 12 people running and you vote for 6 of them, or 7 or whatever, or 8. So could we put everybody out there and then vote for our 2? I mean, I know it's a lot more cumbersome and I don't know how you can do it virtually, but.
Yeah. So you're essentially a suggestion of like a ranked choice voting sort of situation. Colleen, go ahead.
Yes, I had, I mean, I would be honored to serve, but, and I had talked with a few people. I just have to say that I have incredible respect for Adrian and Mark's work, so I would totally support the 2 of them. So I'm going to withdraw my name at this point and just have the board know that when there's a need for committee work, that I'm right there. I'm happy to help.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. So let me just parse through, I think, what has occurred here to make sure that I've got it right. So I've got Don had nominated Mark. I'm not sure whether or not then Don's follow-up conversation also nominated Adrian, or if that was just ruminating going on there.
I did it more because Kim has been a valued member, and I felt the way her intonation that I could hear and the way she addressed it, I figured she had someone or she wanted to support Adrian, which we all want to support Adrian. So I said I would put Adrian in the mix. I'm not trying to get rid of Adrian. I'm trying to fill a vacant position with somebody who I think is very capable.
Okay. So I'm still left to know whether or not, do I have 2 nominations for the first slot?
Yes, you have 2 nominations.
Okay, so I currently have 2 nominations for one of the at-large member positions. I have Mark Schauber and I have Adrian Raymond's 2 nominations for one position. Sue, I am struggling here at the moment to try to figure out, is the best way to approach this through a ranked choice vote, and with only 2 members and they both get seats, or do I run the vote for just the single position and then hold another vote for the second position?
My intent by doing that was that we'd fill both positions. If we're not going to do that, I'm going back to my original motion, which was Mark Schwarber.
Okay. Something that I thought would be so simple tonight has suddenly got so complicated. Kim, go ahead.
Oops, sorry, thanks. And thanks, Don, for your deference. And definitely know that folks have contributed so much to the work on the board. And I definitely had talked to Colleen. I was thinking that we've had some geographic diversity on the executive committee and district size diversity that Colleen's thoughtful contributions at the board level would have been a great way to keep that geographic and size diversity at the executive committee level. It really allows for very rich conversations at the executive committee. And then I just, and I'm not, also really appreciate the work you're doing outside of the VSBA work, Mark. And I just didn't know to what extent that creates potential conflict. And I sort of opened that up and put that out there. And I don't know how you even feel, Mark, in those two roles, and people might not realize the other roles you serve.
Mark, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Kim, and thank you, Don, and Colleen, everyone. I would be honored to take the position, but everyone should be aware that I am the executive director for the Coalition of Vermont Student Equity, and we are actively advocating for the full implementation of the People Weighting Factors report. I don't think there would be a conflict of interest, but I do believe that everyone should be aware of what I do outside of the SBA.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Neil?
Oh, sorry, Flor, you were hiding behind my participants list. Go ahead.
That's okay. I think it would be, if we're going to do it, to me, we're going to do a candidate by, opening by opening. I would like to, have have Mark and Adrian, have two in each at least, so that we have a choice to vote, because I think we have three viable candidates. I think with what Kim just said, being able to have somebody from Chittenden in the executive committee would be really valuable from the upper side. So if we could either do 3 nominations for the 2 seats, or do Adrian and Mark right now, how the way Don had done it, I would be more comfortable with that.
Thank you for that. Colleen?
Okay, so I just want to let you know that if I were elected for this at-large position, I would willingly serve. And for those of you who don't know me, I have 27 years of board experience, Chittenden South Supervisory Union, then Champlain Valley School District. I was the Act 46 committee lead to transition our supervisory union to a district. I led that for a year and a half. Outside of, and Mark, I appreciate you sharing your experience outside, or what you're focused on outside of this board. And I have, so thank you for sharing that. Outside of this board, my work is, I'm a consultant for higher education. I work primarily with educator preparation programs. My clients are across the country. And so I come to this work on the board with that perspective of advancing public education on a very broad level. And so I just wanted to share that bit of my work and what I bring to this board. So thank you. And I appreciate the votes of confidence from a couple of the board members. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. And then just so clarification for the chair here, I want, can we consider your nomination back in? Did you withdraw the sort of?
Yes, I would serve. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Adrian, did I see your hand up? Go ahead. You're muted, Adrian.
I was putting on or pressing on my space bar that's supposed to work. I just thought I should, give a little more information. I do a lot of school board stuff. I'd be very happy to serve further on the executive committee. It's been very interesting and has given me a lot more perspective. And I think I bring my perspective to the board, and that's helpful. So I'll leave my name in, but I figured I should say something.
Okay, thank you. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, now I'm not lobbying for Mark here, but a couple of things. Everybody should recognize that even though he is the executive director of the other organization, it's an unpaid position, something he does because he thoroughly believes in it, and just another way for him to put his energies into education in Vermont. And also, geographical diversity. When was the last time there was someone from really the southern tier of Vermont on the executive committee? That would be of interest to me if we're spreading it around, especially as we're trying to entice some people from this region to be more active with VSBA. So, I just want to say that too, not necessarily lobbying one way or another, but we're throwing it, we're just lobbing stuff out there. So that's my piece.
Dan's trying to politely say this just turned into a free-for-all, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
you got it.
No, thanks for that. So here's my current thought on the item, and I'm just going to check with you guys to see if you're okay with this, right? So now I believe that what I have are 3 nominations for 2 seats. I'm thinking about going with just a ranked choice voting. So the top 2 vote getters would then be the 2 at-large members. My recommendation, if Sue or staff can handle this, is if the voting board members send their votes to Sue via email so that we can handle the voting that way. And then we could.
Or in the chat, they can send it directly to her in the chat. That would probably be better.
Yep. I mean, I think one of the challenges with the chat sometimes is if you hit the wrong button, sometimes you'll send your vote to everybody. And I just want to make sure that this is a process that folks are comfortable with. Sue, do you see issue with what I've proposed before we sort of try to make it so?
No, I think you can do that, and I'm happy to have them emailed to me.
Okay, before you go firing off those emails, folks, though, let me get through the rest of the comments. Kim, go ahead.
That's going to create a problem for some people because they'll have to get out of this. They'll have to get out of this and go to their email and come back in.
Okay. Kim, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna, I think, say what Flora said, just to clarify that Adrian is from a little bit down south, right, Adrian? And Jim is from Manchester area. So I thought I'd throw that out there, and certainly not to further argument. I just wanted to clarify the situation. Thanks.
So Neil, we each get 1 vote, right? We each get 1 vote.
So what you're going to do is you're going to send to Sue the 2 people that you believe should have the at-large positions, and then we'll tabulate the number of votes that each person gets, and the 2 top vote getters will get the 2 positions. Make sense, Don?
I don't think that's the way our bylaws set it out.
All right, hang on 1 second then while we confer with the bylaws.
Where are you referring to in the bylaws, Don?
I'm not looking at the bylaws for me, so I have to get out of this and go and find it. But I believe the bylaws speak to we elect them individually.
I'm looking at officers and their duties. Elections and terms of service are as follows. The president is elected by the board of directors from among active members at its August meeting, the term to take effect on November 1. The vice president, treasurer, and 2 executive committee members will be elected from among the members of the board of directors at the November meeting.
Okay.
I'm just continuing to look to see if there's anything else. I'm not seeing anything else. Let me look here. There's a section on the executive committee. That doesn't talk about the election though. The election's covered in the language that I already spoke of.
Okay. So I believe then, based on our reading of the bylaws, that method of election would be acceptable. But let me just put it out there. Are there any board members that are opposed to this method of electing the 2 at-large positions? All right. I'm not seeing any. So if that is the case, then Sue, if you're still okay with it, I think so Carrie also thinks that we might be able to do a Zoom poll for this. And I believe that she is rapidly trying to construct it. Carrie, can we guarantee 1 vote per participant with the poll?
Well, I just went to get in. It said that I'm logged in 2 different places. So I think it's not allowing
Okay.
me to, because probably another staff member has.
Let's revert to the email voting.
Okay.
All right, so folks, right now, if you could put together an email, the body of the email just would be the 2 people that you feel should fill those positions. We have 3 candidates: Mark Schauber, we have Colleen McKinnon, and we have Adrian Raymond. The body of your email should only include 2 names, please. Send those emails to Sue, okay?
Neil, may I
Yes,
use
sir.
the chat? May I use the chat?
Yeah, but just chat directly to Sue so that if you want to keep your vote confidential.
Correct.
And anybody else that needs to use the chat for this as well too, let's go ahead and do that. And then we'll have Sue gather the votes from 2 different locations.
Feels like we need some music or something. Do, 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 do.
Gang, if you can do me a favor and just raise your Zoom hand if you have submitted your vote, that way I just get a sense as to how we're making as far as progress goes here. Jeremy, are you still, are you voting or? I got it. Okay, perfect. So I think Sue, I think all votes hopefully should be cast at this point in time. And it would just be a matter of tabulating the results, which I do understand might take a little bit of time.
I'm working on it.
Yep. Carrie, maybe while Sue is doing that, can I ask you, how soon can we expect to see the recordings from the conference from last week?
They're done. You have to request them. We don't automatically put them up. We're only sending them to people that request them.
All right. I think I will send you an email requesting them.
Perfect. I'd be glad to send you the recording. Anyone else who would like a copy of the recording who had someone attend the conference from your SU? That's important.
Yeah.
Just send me a quick email and I'll be glad to send them out to people. Like I said, as long as someone from your SU attended the conference and the SU is billed for it, that's all that we ask.
Sure. Yeah, for the folks that maybe weren't able to see it, both of the keynotes, both Lavelle and Dr. Minson, I believe, it was really great material, very timely, very topical. And folks, I could say probably now, I think it's okay to put your hands down unless you have a question. But I think we're just tabulating votes right now. But thank you for letting me know that you submitted your vote.
Okay, Neil, this is going to take me a few minutes because there are some people that have sent it to me in the chat and emailed me, and I want to make sure that I'm not
double counting. Okay. Why don't we do this while you are doing that? Am I correct in thinking that Sandra had the agenda item for?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sandra, if you wouldn't mind, I think we'll just try to get a little bit of work done while we're getting some work done.
Absolutely. I'm happy to step in. I wanted to provide you with an update on the work that we're doing through the grant from the Vermont Community Foundation. So as a reminder, this grant supports work by 3 collaborating associations, which is VSBA, VSA, and VPA, to promote equity, anti-racism, and inclusion in communities statewide. And we call that the Welcoming Communities Grant for short. So specifically, the work focuses on efforts to improve equitable practices and outcomes for all Vermont students. And there are 3 components under the grant. One is work with the Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Inclusion. And the scope of the work there is policy review. So I wanted to let you know that I've had 2 meetings with Jameson Davis from Vermont Partnership to start working through a process and just generally understanding the perspective of policy review and the use of an equity lens. And then we have a meeting with the Vsba legal team and Vermont Partnerships on Monday so that we can all talk through a process. As well, internal growth is another piece that the Vermont Partnership is working with us on, and that's the equity leaders of each association have come together with 2 members from Vermont Partnership to begin discussions around what we're naming conspicuously courageous leadership. And we have a follow-up meeting regarding that on November 18th. A second component is collaboration with Insight Education Group, and they are assisting VSBA and superintendents with ongoing conversations in their communities related to equity and issues around equity, helping us develop resources such as talking points, community engagement, best practices, etc. They're also providing real-time thought partnership to superintendents and school board chairs. And there's a process for that that we've been outlining in the weekly updates. And then the third component isn't yet launched, But at the start of 2022, we anticipate communicating about this third component of the grant, which will be mini grants. We will have five $5,000 local grassroots grants going out to support the work of welcoming school communities, with a focus on those areas of the state that are striving to address equity from a top-down and bottom-up perspective. So that information will be coming out soon.
Thank you, Sandra.
You're
Any of you folks have any questions related to the work or what Sandra spoke to? None. Just for my own benefit, how many of you guys are actually having sort of DEI, equity, diversity, inclusion discussions in your districts right now? Okay. And then a show of how are they going? Somewhere between here and here. Okay. Dan, how are yours going?
Actually, quite well, I think. I didn't want to, hold the thumb out because yes, I wouldn't want to say up, down, but I would say above, especially for an old white guy, is stuff that you need to listen to. And so for me, I feel positive about them.
Good. I will say you broke up a little bit there with your internet connection, but I think I got the gist of what you were saying. All right. Maybe check in with a status update, Sue. All right, deep in the work. Board members, we're going to then jump ahead a little bit to see if we can take care of this other stuff. And Kim, would you be prepared to cover the treasurer's report at this point?
I'm sorry, I'm on mute. Sorry about that. Yes, I was going to have Jim. No, I'm kidding. I am happy to. And I think, it's in the package. I think the thing I just wanted to point people to was a clarity that some of the information is going to look a little bit off because comparing this year to last year in terms of our cash on hand and our receivables would look different because we billed earlier and we have less of our year underway at this point in the year than we did, or more of our year underway than we did before. So that is, I think, really the biggest thing to point to. And we will continue to be somewhat fluid with respect to the collective bargaining. I don't know if anybody has any questions, and I'm hoping what I was mentioning makes sense. We have a higher cash on hand right now than we did before, because last year we were spending down at the costs of operation from, or some hadn't paid yet. I'm just trying to remember. I apologize. Carrie and I had looked at this before, but that's where the differential is.
I billed dues in July this year instead of September because of the fiscal year change. So we had 2 more months. We had the money for 2 more months than we had last year.
Yeah. Does that make sense? I'm sorry I mangled that. I was trying to get back to that link on my.
No, that's okay. I put you on the spot and I did it quickly, but no,
that's okay. I was fully expecting it, and Carrie and I had talked about it before, but it was last week and I didn't have the sheets up in front of me. But does anybody have any questions? Again, we're sort of back in a normal cycle now. You've got a 12-month budget. You've got a normal fiscal year. And so this year-over-year comparison is going to look a little bit different on the balance sheet, especially, but potentially other items as well, just as a sort of FYI as we look at these quarterly. And the treasurer looks at them monthly and the board sees them quarterly, just for new people to understand.
Thanks. Any questions on the treasurer's report? Okay, I'm seeing none, but I see Sue is back on camera, so I will ask Sue if we have an update.
Yes, I do have an update. Is it okay if I just list who I received votes from, just to make sure that I received them from everyone?
Yeah, please, let's make sure that we've got them all registered.
Okay. So these are the people that I received votes from: Martine, Suzanne, Dave Sharp, Kim, Lisa, Kevin, Mark Schauber, Neil, Jeremy, Colleen, Gaston, Adrian, Dan, Tara, Amy, and Floor. Did I miss anyone?
Yeah, Mark Clough, I sent you an email.
Okay, let me
I sent
go back.
an email. Sue, I sent you and Carrie both an email.
Okay, I did not see that, Don. Let me go back. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries, Sue. If you want to spend a little bit more time on that, I may actually turn it over to, I think, Susan and or folks from the VSBA Awards Subcommittee that wanted to read out to the broader board.
Neil,
Well,
could
thank
I
you.
interrupt for 1 second? I'm sorry, Susan.
No, that's right, all right.
I still don't, I do not have an email from Don or from Mark Clough.
Let me put it in the chat. No?
You can do that, Don. Do you know how to, you want to chat directly to Sue? And Mark, did you send an email or? Mark Clough.
Neil?
Yes, Don.
Okay. I just went to chat, didn't work. I have no problem knowing. I voted for Mark and Adrian and my vote counted.
Okay.
Nothing against Colleen.
Okay, I'll note that here, Don.
And Sue, are we still in need of Mark Clough's vote, or did that come through?
I have not received it.
Okay. Mark, you're still on mute, though. I don't know. Did you try to send through an email or?
Wait a minute, I got a chat from Mark Clough, it looks like.
Okay.
So I'm all set now, hold on.
Okay. So while Sue is finalizing the tally vote, then maybe I will turn it back over to Susan and the awards committee report.
Sure. I was hoping that one of the awards committee members would speak, but I understand everybody's totally out straight. So the committee met, and as those of you who were at the conference are aware, the Taconic and Green District Board was recognized with the 2021 Exceptional Board Leadership Award. And that plaque is in my hot little hands, and I will get that delivered. There was some discussion at the committee meeting. And by the way, there are 4 people on the committee, but only 2 attended the meeting. And there was discussion about the Stafford Bell Award, which the committee opted to table in preference for developing some more clarity and documentation around the award, understanding what it signifies, how it's awarded, if there's a nominating process, what that ought to be, et cetera, because there is no record of any of that in any of the archives, including Carrie's brain, which is remarkable because Carrie keeps everything there. So I would like to make a pitch on their behalf for additional participation in that process. As I said, there are 4 people who were on the committee. Officially, that committee's charge ended with the selection of the Exceptional Board Leadership Award, but we now have a new purpose. And hopefully there are people attending tonight who would like to get involved in that way. So anybody who's just really eager, I mean, we're creating history here, folks. So anyone who is eager to participate in that, thank you, Colleen. Mark, you're already on it, but thanks. We'll put you in twice. As you think about it, this won't be a large time commitment, and there's really almost no pressure of time about it, as long as it's resolved with enough lead time prior to any kind of nomination process for next year. My guess is that that committee will opt to present that award at the conference as we do with the other award, but that's all up for grabs right now. So if anybody would like to participate in that as you think on it, please get in touch either with me or Carrie. Carrie has offered to slide into the staff coverage of that committee. And so we'll be having a transition over the next 6-7 weeks. And she, of course, brings the institutional memory. So that will be helpful. And that's it.
Thanks, Susan. And so for those board members that might want to participate in that, could you just give us a sense of what you think the time commitment might be for this work?
I would guess we're probably talking, and Mark, please feel free to chime in here. We're probably talking 2 to 3 meetings, I would think. With some, you're saying yes, probably about that. Is that what that shaking thumb means? Okay. Yeah, 2 to 3 meetings, and somebody will need to create a draft once there's some agreement on what the contents ought to be. And then I imagine it will be group managed, as wordsmithing often goes.
Okay. And as everything else that we've been doing recently, assume it will all be via Zoom, correct? So you don't
Yes,
have to worry
there's
about
no reason that
travel.
anybody would need to travel.
Okay, so why don't we do this? We've got 2 members with Mark and Mark. God, if we had one more board member named Mark, we could go for a trifecta here, but I don't think that's going to happen. Susan, if you don't get another board member to step forward between now
Colleen
and
has just. Colleen
awesome.
Raised her hand.
Awesome. All right. I think we have a subcommittee. If there are other board members that want to join, you are more than welcome to. But why don't we go with that constitution? If you guys can then get together and work that out. And if you can squeeze the work in prior to the next board meeting, then we can certainly entertain whatever, whatever suggestions you've got at that point.
Thanks, Dan.
All right. Perfect. No, thank you guys. Sue, one more check-in on status.
Okay, I've been over and over it, done it very carefully, and the results are the top vote getter was Colleen with 16 votes. The second vote getter was Adrian with 12, and Mark was the third vote getter with 8.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you to all of the board members that were willing to serve in those positions. I really appreciate your willingness to serve a VSBA in that capacity. And then certainly thank you to Colleen and to Adrian and certainly to Mark, all 3 of you. I appreciate the work that you're doing for the VSBA. So
thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, so we now have a constituted executive committee for the VSBA. We have basically run roughshod over the agenda this evening. So for my new board members, I want to let you know, like, this is not normally how it goes, okay? Normally, we're fairly smooth about this. Sometimes we even get done early. So I hope that you're not going to hold this against me as your first experience with the VSBA board. Okay, with that, then I'm going to double back on the agenda, and we are going to go back up to the NSBA update. And with that, if Sue has had a chance to catch her breath, I'm going to turn it over to Sue for the first part of this.
Okay. There is information in your packet about a letter that the NSBA sent to President Biden, in which the association asked for federal assistance to address threats of violence and intimidation of school board members. And then also in your packet is the NSBA's apology for that letter. And I guess I should also mention in between there was a response from the Attorney General of the United States stating that he was going to do what NSBA had asked him to do, had asked the president to do. So the NSBA ended up issuing an apology for the letter, and that was the result of State School Boards Association, which were not consulted in the drafting of the letter or its release, contacting the NSBA to express concerns about some of the language that was used in the letter, and that basically that was what they were concerned about, the language that was used in the letter, and that they had not been consulted. In its apology, the NSBA said that it values the work of local school boards and the input of parents who should, I'm quoting now, should and must continue to be heard when it comes to decisions about their children's education, health, and safety. And the NSBA went on to say, we regret and apologize for the letter. And they also stated that they were going to be reviewing their processes and procedures so that this type of thing doesn't happen again. In the meantime, and since then, there have been 4 state associations that withdrew from the NSBA in the past month, and those are Pennsylvania, Ohio, Missouri, and New Hampshire. And Montana, I believe, has made the decision to withdraw effective June 2022. So since the VSBA is a member of the NSBA, we felt it was important to draw this matter to the board's attention, and I'll hand it back to you, Neil.
Thanks, Sue. And actually, I just want to do a really quick informal poll first. Can you guys just raise your hands if you knew about this prior to tonight's meeting? Okay, so more folks than I thought. You know, I wanted to bring it to this body's attention because, you know, obviously some states have had a very serious reaction to this, including, you know, our neighbors to the east of us in New Hampshire. And I was familiar with it, at least through New Hampshire's position, because of the Interstate School District Board that I sit on. But, you know, I wanted to make sure that this body was aware. And the second thing is, you know, I want to get the sense here, I think maybe it would be helpful for Sue and the VSBA to maybe have a collective position on the letter in case we're asked about it. So far, we've had a couple of inquiries, but they haven't been, they've been from out of state or from some national or out of state journalists, I believe. But I don't know to what extent you folks are experiencing any particular issues related to this locally. But I wanted to open it up for discussion here to find out whether or not folks had thoughts, and if we could perhaps sort of coalesce around you know, the VSBA position on this one, which might be especially important if we are actually asked for it. So with that, I will look to see if anybody wanted to comment on that. Adrian, go ahead.
I had somebody actually ask me personally whether I agreed with the description of domestic terrorism. And this was somebody who's come to our meetings with a lot of objections and sort of the national mantra statements. But I have not had anybody say anything about any of the responses. And they didn't even mention the National School Boards Association. They were talking more about the Merrick Garland letter.
Thanks, Adrian. Anybody else with thoughts on this? You know, so one of the things that has struck me is that you know, especially wearing my VSBA hat, right? There was a measure of good governance, I think, here from the NSBA that was not followed. in drafting a letter and not at least running it by the state associations before they sent it out, claiming that it was on behalf of all of the states and their associations. So I certainly have concerns in that regard. And I do think that some of the language, had it been run by state associations, might have changed in that letter before it went out. So I think that there was a process issue here that certainly was lacking. But Dave, I see your hand up, so go to you.
So I agree with you, Neil, on both counts. Should have been shared with the state of, at least the presidents of the state associations, and the language. Oftentimes I will write something and run it by my editors, and it comes out a lot better having run it by thoughtful people. However, from time to time I watch Canadian TV, and I just heard the most amazing expression of this brouhaha over vaccines, when the commentator said healthcare workers opposing vaccines is like firefighters opposing water. And it's just amazing to me that that we have this quasi-violent, approaching violent reaction to the notion of vaccines when we've mandated vaccines in this country for decades. I grew up, as some of you did, I'm sure, with having friends have polio, getting a polio vaccine. What a godsend that was. So, I basically agree with the letter, but I also agree with your comments, Neil.
Thank you, Dave. Floor?
So I received one postcard, our central office, talking about domestic tourists, but that was it. And the language seemed to have been sent by somebody else, but that was about it. I agree with you, Neil. The language and not checking in with everybody was it was bad process and bad governance. And I think I had expressed this before, I would like to concentrate on accepting the apology letter that they sent and standing behind and being part of the change that we want to see in an Nsba as members.
Thank you, Floor. Any other comments from VSBA board members on this? So judging by the feedback that I'm hearing, at least from this group, I'm sensing that there might be support around a VSBA statement that covered the issues that we thought it was bad governance, that the process was flawed, that had it been run by state associations, that the language may have been or likely would have been changed to be more reflective of what states are actually seeing on the ground, that we do not believe that parents are terrorists, that we actually value parental input in the process, welcome their comment at school board meetings. And as Floor indicated, that we are in support of the apology letter that the NSBA sent out on this. Now that's a handful to sort of put into a motion if this body is going to take particular action on it. But I do wonder if maybe, Sue, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if we should craft a motion that would authorize the president and the executive director to maybe draft a response based on the points that were made during this meeting. But I will turn to Gaston because he's got his hand up.
Yeah, thanks. So going back to Dave's comment, I agree with all of the points that you made, Neil, but I think that, to not say that, while we absolutely encourage and welcome input from, parents in our communities, that public and that civic discourse be done in a very respectful manner, seek to understand, listen before you talk, that sort of thing, because in my estimation, one of the things that I got was that, back to Dave, that, it's getting, our public discourse is going down this road that we ought to be pulling back on the reins and saying, hey, listen, there's a better way to communicate with one another and to talk with people as opposed to at people. And that's sort of what is happening, right? And so that's the only comment I have. Over.
Thanks for that, Kath. And I think we could certainly incorporate a measure, addressing civility and conversation and discussion in that as well too. I see Flora's got her.
Neil, I'm leaving at this time. Neil, I'm leaving this time to go to my local meeting.
Thank you, Don. So Sue, I had sort of put a proposed sort of motion out there. Do you think that would be sufficient for the work that we need to do in this area, or would something a little bit more directed be appropriate?
I think that would be sufficient.
Okay.
I don't know if this is a good time to bring it up, but as this discussion is, I don't know if you all have seen that we're having a webinar on November 16th on like dealing with the public with issues like this. And I think it's going to be an excellent webinar.
Nice. Thank you, Carrie. I think I saw, Colleen, there you are.
Yeah, just a clarification on who the audience is. The letter's going to go directly to the NSBA. And do you anticipate that members of the VSBA would see a copy of that? Or because I'm wondering if that changes the content of the letter. And I just want to fully support what Gaston said about ensuring, and Flora, support the apology, acceptance of the apology and statement about civil discourse. So
yeah, let me get Sue's take on this, but I guess where I was originally going with this conversation and what I had in the back of my mind was a VSBA statement that we could use if we were asked for our position on this. And that I wasn't necessarily thinking at the time that we were going to draft a letter to send to the NSBA. I mean, that being said, we certainly could do that. I think for me, this was more being prepared and knowing what our organization felt about this issue if we were asked about it.
okay, that works for me too. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so if I'm seeing some head nods, I think the issue that I've got here though is that I wasn't going to make that
So
motion. I
moved.
think I need
So-
one of you
so
to
moved.
make that motion. So
So moved.
Flor,
I'll
Flor
second.
has moved it. Colleen has seconded it. Any discussion? And what I will let folks know is, so when Sue and I are done with this, we will certainly provide it to you before we provide it to anyone else, so that you guys would have it ahead of time. Any further discussion? Kim, go ahead.
I think that this is just that I just want to say it again out loud and make sure that we are both appreciating the apology, sort of acknowledging the compromised process to arrive at that letter, but we are saying out loud that the essence of the manner in which board meetings and the conduct that's taking place there is happening is unacceptable. So we're doing all those parts in our position on this.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, so that is my understanding, but I will state it explicitly here, right? I think that what I'm hearing from membership here is that we are still concerned about the tenor and the nature of board meetings as we've gone through this. But at the same time, we think that the language that was used in the letter and the process for development of that letter was flawed and could have been done better, and I think would have resulted in a better product had a better process been followed.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion then? Okay, all of those in favor then, if you can just give me a hands up. Okay, thank you, folks. That motion passes. All right, I am going to move on then to the Act 1 Ed Quality Standards Review. And was that with you, Sue, or was that?
Floor.
Okay,
Laura? I am sorry. Laura.
that's okay. Hi, everybody. I don't know if you guys had a chance to read our report, and I don't know if you have questions or if you want us to, sort of share a little bit. We've been working with our representative Heather at the Heather Lynn in part of the Act 1, and we've made great progress, and we've been trying to stay in those 4 categories that we listed in that letter that we shared with you. We're really engaged in making sure that whatever happens, it's a systematic approach to achieving the goal of Act 1, and that we have a current language that was a little controversial at the beginning, but what we meant for current language was really staying using existing law, basically, and using the existing protected categories, and making sure that we're not leaving anybody out of it, and making sure that there's room to grow and we don't date whatever changes we make to this, and also connecting with the professional educator standards. In this work, we're in the process of redoing. They asked us for specific language after we send them all that you saw there, the color-coded document. We wanted to basically sit down with them and brainstorm in a session and be able to kind of write together. But at this point, what they've asked us is for specific language. So we are trying to, Colleen and Gaston and Amy and Sue have been working really hard, and Colleen and Gaston have the document right now and have transformed it so we can include the Vermont Principals Association, Superintendents Association, to make sure that, we're not like doubling up in the wording. But it's exciting work. It is, they've been collaborative, and we have seen a change in the way that we communicate, and I feel like they are appreciative in a different way. And I look at Colleen and Sue and Gaston of that of our feedback in the last meeting. We all attended the last meeting of the Act 1 group. So I don't know if anybody has questions, or any of the committee members want to share anything else. I don't want to take a lot of time since we're a little behind. Any specific questions, or Colleen?
Yeah, I'll just add, I thought you did an excellent summary there. For just wanted to share with the VSBA board that there is very strong alignment between the VSA, the VPA, and the VSBA. It's very consistent. So I think that's a real positive for us.
And I would
the
also
committee-
add, oh, sorry, Colleen.
Well, I was just going to say, and the committee that we met with was extremely welcoming and gave us far more time than we anticipated. It was nice.
I was just going to add that there is that alignment, but we all did it completely separately. So it's interesting.
Any other questions for Floor or that committee? Floor, do you know what next steps are in this process?
Yeah, we're going to try to finalize all our written comments by the 3rd week of November. Gaston is finalizing what he has for Friday, and I'm assuming we're going to try to meet next week and clean up our document and give it to Heather to bring to the committee. And then I'm assuming we're going to get to read the draft before it goes out, and I'm looking to Sue on that. And I was able to be at the Roland conference, and Amanda was presenting there, and she is really looking, and that's going to be a little bit of a hard thing. She is really looking for people to vote. So if your organization doesn't vote for the document, you are not in support of Act 1, which that is going to be hard, right? So we were hoping that it's just we're all writing this together, right? Like it's all collaborative, and we don't have to vote. But we don't. It's too early to tell. Yeah, I think.
And Flora, I'm not sure if you saw it because it came kind of later in the day, but it looks like the the Act One work group's November 18th meeting has been canceled. So I think the timeline might be a little bit more, there might be a little more time now than we thought there was. I think
That's
they're not
great.
meeting now until beginning of December.
Yeah, yeah. After they're done, it will go to the State Board of Education. So we are, yeah, so they're trying to get into a very specific timeline because they've missed some deadlines, and we're hoping that they're not too concentrated on the timeline, but more in the content of the change that this will mean for all our kids and the outcomes that we're looking for. So, but yeah.
Thank you. And then either Flor or Sue, if you guys know, after it goes to the state board, it goes through a process there too as well, right? Before it would then be sort of, I guess I would call it enacted or put in place, or?
Yes, it goes through a formal rulemaking process. This is all prior to the formal rulemaking process.
Okay, as I see my State Board of Ed person pop back into the video here. And then just for my clarification, what's the timeline on something like that then? Do we know?
Months.
Okay.
I can't remember. So it's like there's a draft set that becomes open for public comment. So the recommendations will come to the state board. Will take some time to arrive at a draft set that becomes then open for public comment. There's ICAR and LCAR, and I don't remember which is which and which part of the process happens, but one of them opens the process. And then there's a timeline within which we need to gather public comment. And then what's happened in the past, we've had a subcommittee of the state board try and bring that feedback to the extent appropriate back into a final draft. And then the final draft goes before the full board for a vote. And when the full board has approved it, it then goes through whichever of the two cars that it didn't go through the first time to become effective. So it's a long process. And I think I'm excited to imagine that we will see some updating of our ed quality standards, and that they will be reflective of centering equity in the work. So in all my hats, I'm really excited to see this happening.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions from board members on this? Gaston, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Kim, for that. So I guess my question is, so you'll get a draft of the EQS from the Act One working group, and then you take that draft and make your own draft with your own input, and then that goes out to the public. And so will VSBA necessarily be able to respond to the State Board of Ed's version or draft? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm reflecting on the processes we've had for rules that came out of Act 173. And so the state board takes this advisory draft, I think, and Sue, please correct me when I'm wrong, which is probably plenty, that the opening of the rules is the responsibility of the state board, taking the work from the advisory group. And what happened with 173 is there was an advisory group and the AOE draft, and those kept going back and forth between the two. And so I don't know actually where the AOE is on the input regarding this draft. And the work isn't the AOE's, but the AOE has staffed the legal work that the state board has been doing around rules. So whether or not that'll be true in this case, I'm not sure. And Sue, maybe you know, or somebody, maybe Flora knows to what extent the AOE has been intimately involved with this drafting.
So Heather is part of it. Sue is there, but Heather is, but they are part of the writing. They're actually part of the subcommittee too. So, but how, I didn't see a document. Sue, did you see a document? I didn't see a document of them specific with recommendations, because they've been part of the writing. of the recommendations. So my understanding, Sue, is that there is also another group that Amanda has expressed that is going to take a look, just as making sure that all of the part that is current law is clear. And they did some reference to that at the last meeting, and I just forget. I was trying to look through my notes and I forget who they were.
I don't recall that from the last meeting. I must have missed that, Floor.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought there was somebody else that was going to look at it, and then it was going to the State Board of Education. But I don't think there's that AOE review. We've been asking that, but I don't know that there's one.
And so I think that's my only pause to say, the process that I've been through in the past had a back and forth of that draft from the advisory group that existed for 173 and the agency. And then the state board stepped in actually to sort of bring that in for a landing so we could have a formal draft begin the process. And then worked with the feedback that happened in public comment to finalize that with some working group to come to a final draft for the full board. So I am unsure how this version would go. I know we are expecting to see this. The State Board of Ed is expecting to see a recommendation for changes to the ed quality standards, and fully prepared to know that that's a body of work that will be opened coming up. I couldn't tell you much more about a timeline or what this version is precisely going to look like when it gets to us. It's been a little bit different. Same thing, like 2200, which is the independent school rules series, is open now for public comment. And there's two pieces of that are being worked on sort of in parallel play world. One's in formal process now, and the other one isn't there yet. That was bigger rules. So once rules are open, sometimes other things come up that changes where you look for what the next rule is that's impacted by the domino that just fell.
Well, I think I just opened up a Pandora's box here with that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's about as much as I know. We've had the process of the group working, Amanda's come to us to share with us a broad summary of the work and the process. And so we haven't had anybody formally present us with the draft that is being worked on right now, except to know that it's being worked on with lots of input, and that is always so helpful before it gets to the formal process.
Thanks for that. Any other questions related to this item? All right. And so actually, Flor, I do not think that we're that far off of our agenda, because if I'm looking at this correctly, I think I want to go on to the strategic plan monitoring report at this point.
Okay, I just have a few things I would like to highlight. I think the virtual conference went really well last week, and I wanted to thank Carrie for keeping all the technology running behind the scenes. That's a really complicated job, and she makes it look easy. So thank you very much, Carrie. We're having our third board chair forum next Monday. That's something that Susan started doing for board chairs to drop in and talk with each other, and it's been really successful. So if you're a board chair, consider doing that board chair forum. As Carrie mentioned, we're having a special webinar next Tuesday. It's from 6 to 7:30 p.m. It's on the effective and appropriate management of school board meetings, really having to do with this topic of when contentious issues come up, how do board chairs effectively handle the meeting. And we have some great guests on a panel. One of the people is Pietro Lynn. He's going to talk about the legal aspects. We have Dr. John Donnelly, who's a psychologist, who's going to help us with sort of the way that we communicate. We have Commissioner Sherling from the Department of Public Safety there to hopefully he'll be there. I think he's maybe traveling, so we're going to hope he can get in the meeting, and he'll be there to talk about the law enforcement aspects. And then we have 3 school board chairs and a superintendent, so it should be great. Let's see. Sandra completed an update to the Title I model policy, which involved significant collaboration with AOE, and she's working on updates to a number of other model policies as well. And she's also working with the Vermont Partnership through the equity grant on reviewing several model policies through an equity lens partnership on that work with Vermont Partnership. And then also, she and I are both serving on a number of task forces and advisory councils as a result of recent legislation, and you can get the specifics of that in the strategic plan monitoring report. And then the last thing I just wanted to make sure that you had seen was that I sent an email to all of you last Friday. This isn't in the strategic plan monitoring report because it came after we sent out that report, but wanted to let you know the news that the VSBA prevailed in the Supreme Court case, McVeigh versus VSBA. The Vermont Supreme Court found that VSBA is not a public agency subject to the Public Records Act. So I sent you information about that by email last Friday, and I attached the court's decision to the email. So you should all have that. And finally, wanted to let you know that the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union, who hadn't been a member for a couple of years, is now back with the SBA as a member. So we are very excited about that. So that's it from me, Neil. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue. Good news all around, I think. And for our newer board members, the strategic plan monitoring report is really our way of making sure that the work that we're doing in this organization matches the original goals that we set for ourselves. So you'll see there's, I believe, 6 goals in the report that match up to the 6 goals that we came up with in our strategic plan a few years ago. And then including the indicators and the strategies. You know, it's amazing to me. I look at it every month and I see the work that the staff is doing, and to be able to directly tie that back to the goals for the organization is just an amazing thing. And so much so that I've even tried getting our local district as well to adopt the same sort of approach in monitoring and reporting things, because it really makes it pretty clear that the work that we're doing on a daily basis is directly tied to the goals of the organization. So I just wanted to point that out for folks. I think one of the last items on the agenda this evening, I believe, was approval of the consent agenda, which is the minutes from the September meeting. And so I will look for a motion.
I'll make
Mark,
that motion.
go ahead.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mark with the motion, Kim Gleason with the second. Any discussion, comments, changes for those clarification in the minutes? All right, seeing none then. All those in favor, just give me a little hand raise. We can see around the table. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The one abstention. Perfect.
And that's, Neil, that's only because I wasn't here, so I don't feel I should vote on minutes that I wasn't part of.
That's quite all right. Certainly understand that. Last item is new business. Are there any items of Mark? Please go ahead.
Thank you. First, I wanted to thank the staff for a great conference. And along those lines, Lavelle Brown was an excellent keynote speaker. And a couple people down here in Wyndham have approached me and asked me whether we may be able to get him for some sort of webinar series or something. So I told him that I would ask, because he really was excellent.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to have that feedback. I know that he's done work with the VPA, so we could certainly inquire with him. Is there anything in particular that you would like to hear from him about?
No, I can request that feedback from some people down here to see if there was something. They were speaking more generally. They've heard him on some other, I guess, webcasts that he does. And they really thought that would be beneficial for the greater board community, their boards, to have the experience of hearing him speak.
Sue, and maybe to the point before, do we know, I mean, for those members that attended, they can get the recording. Are we, the ability by which folks might be able to share said recording?
Well, once we send it to someone, we don't really have control over what they do with it.
It is not on our YouTube channel. It's the links that I send out are private links, but any SU that signed up for the conference can share it within their SU.
Okay. So Mark, I just to say that because maybe that's one way for folks that maybe didn't see his presentation, or, you know, if you wanted to share it a little bit down that way, that might be one option.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And then just to
Mark,
make sure that
we can send you the link, Mark.
Thanks. Colleen.
I just wanted to say that he met with our board as well, not just with the VSBA for the webinar, and was very well received. So if we could come up with some kind of focused work, I'm sure he would be very welcomed by quite a few people in the state. Just giving us that outside perspective, you know, the stranger from away who can help us understand our own issues of trying to move districts forward, addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion. So he was great with our board. So I'm in favor of it.
Thanks, Colleen. I'm going to do Dave Sharp and then Adrian.
Yes, I thought he was excellent. And I want all my board members to have an opportunity to listen. So I already inquired with Carrie if I could get a recording and if that was okay to share that, or encourage my board members to watch it, because I just thought it was an outstanding talk.
Thanks, Dave. Adrian?
I just wanted to say he does do outside work because he's been working with both our board and our district on professional development. We're having our next session sometime next month. He even came in person. It was very exciting. His big deal was, I know I look shorter in real life than I do on camera. So you have to make sure you tell him that. But he's great, and he's very easy to work with.
You find the time to do all of this stuff.
I don't
Kim,
know.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I was on that, and he was so inspiring, and was chatting with our superintendent, and she is in a cohort that's probably doing work through the VSA, I'm assuming, with him, and works with him, you know, once a month or something. And I actually hadn't realized that, but I am so grateful that that's happening at the administrative level in our district. And I also know that it is probably equally as important that the board learns in that way as well. So I will look forward to that being shared with the full board. I'm hopeful. I'll recommend it. I can't do it anymore, but I'm definitely going to hope that that happens, and perhaps even our superintendent will do it. There's so much learning there that I don't think could be any more important than anything a board would be doing right now.
Thanks, Kim. Any other items of new business? All right. I'm not seeing any. Folks, I think we pulled it off. Despite the challenges of electing some at-large members to our executive committee, we're still done kind of right on time. Thanks, guys. I couldn't have done it without you guys, right, and your help. Floor.
I just want to say thank you to you, Neil, too, besides the staff, for running a great conference. You did a great job. And, you know, I had to leave a little early at the end, but thank you for all you do. It's appreciated.
Oh, please. When they provide you with a good script, it's pretty easy. It's like an actor just learning your lines, and all you got to do is just deliver them. So it's the people behind you that make you look good.
guys are a well-oiled machine, and I don't know, it was a bummer not to be together, but it was still so worth the time. And thank you guys for making it feel as engaging, almost as if we were together.
Nice. All right. I know I said this last year, but this year I'm going to say, I promise we will be together in person next year. All right. Don't prove me wrong a second time. If we don't have anything else, then I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Seconded by, I'm going to give it to Suzanne this time. All right. Folks, thank you so much. If you agree with the motion in the second, you can just leave the Zoom call now.
Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Night.
Good night.
Bye.